Okay, folks, I'm going to stop that music, and it's about 30 seconds before we get really started at this 12:30 webinar. There's 12:30. I have to show you something really quick on the screen. We have a lot of people on here already. This is Bill Murphy. I am your host today, and I'm with ASP Enterprises, Quick Supply Company, and Bowman Construction Supply. And I'm alone in an office and I'm cracking up. If you look on my screen, I grabbed a folder of music that I wanted to share, and I realized I grabbed one from my days of being an announcer for high school football, and almost everything I have on here is pretty inappropriate except Keep on the Sunny Side. I'm cracking up because I thought I grabbed a lot of different songs, so sorry you had to hear Keep on the Sunny Side 3 times in a row. I personally think it's hilarious. You can let that be part of your Q&A if you'd rather I played something different next time. So now that we're getting rolling here, this is being recorded. I am Bill Murphy with ASP Enterprises, Quick Supply Company, and Bowman Construction Supply. I see the ASP logo on top there. We should have had all 3 logos. And after I do a brief intro of our company and handle some business, I'll introduce our guest speaker from Presto Geosystems. Most of you on here are already familiar with us, I'm sure. We've been around for actually over 50 years for most of these businesses. And I do work as the civil engineer for ASP, Quick Supply, and Bowman in all the states you see shown on your screen there. We have 8 offices. I'm sitting right now in our Des Moines Quick Supply office. I'm in a private office in a warehouse that is actively being used. You may hear some activity in the background as our crews are loading trucks, and I'll get into that in a little bit. Joined by our ASP offices out of St. Louis, Kansas City, Omaha, and Wichita. And we even have a gentleman who offices out of his home in Illinois. And then we have 3 Bowman Construction Supply offices in Denver, Longmont, and Colorado Springs. I'm blessed to get to work with all those folks. We do have many CPESs on staff because we are very active with sediment erosion control and vegetated solutions. And not only in the construction industry side of that, but also in the industry side with organizations and local committees and chapters. We have 1 civil engineer on staff. That's me, Bill Murphy. Been a civil engineer for 25 years, and I have a lot of construction experience as well as office design and working through permitting. And then in the last 10 years, been focused on engineered products, especially in the stormwater area. We have a lot of sales professionals that cover all of those states. I get to work with all of them, and we are all very interconnected. Our companies have invested a lot of time and money in upgrading our software in the last few years to make us more lean and efficient. I'll get into that in the next slide here. We have over 8,000 customers now. I need to update my slide. But for those of you that only know us from phone and emails and meeting us at organizations and conferences, if you haven't had the chance to visit us, some of our locations have very impressive showrooms. Some have very impressive displays outdoors. All of our locations have warehouses and trucks and drivers, and we have the ability to quickly load up whatever you order from us and get it to your construction site. And we are still active in all of our branches and all of our locations. And some of our warehouses would blow you away with how full they are of products and materials, so you're not having to wait and have delays. And we also have some very nice stock yards at some of our facilities where we can supply a variety of different materials, not just the erosion and sediment control materials I talked about, but also drainage products, vegetated solutions, engineered products, hardscapes. And we're blessed to be partnered with a lot of the top manufacturers in the world. One of the things I'll say before I get into introducing our speaker is we've really grown in our use of Zoom, and so has the rest of the world. So if there are a couple of delays, please be patient with us. And we also are aware that a lot of parents are working from home and kids are home from school. I'm sure they're all studying and none of them are gaming, but all those activities are slowing down the internet a little bit. We've been blessed. We've had a lot of luck. I don't want to jinx us, but it's been working really well for us. Throughout this presentation, I encourage you to use the Q&A option to ask us questions, and we'll get to those at the end of our presentation. We have disabled the chat function because that was popping up on a lot of people's screens and being a distraction. And we're going to have a survey that we send out at the end of this presentation to all of you attendees. That's how you get your PDH certificate, and that's how you help us help you. So we have a lot more information available on the solutions that we're going to introduce today. We really just want to spark your interest. We ask you to please follow up with us and schedule a Zoom meeting just with us and you, and we'll keep the mics open on a meeting, It could be just you or you and your team. That's free, and you get to tap into our knowledge base, and it's really a great opportunity to learn more about these innovative solutions and some of the leading technologies. We like to say we're at the tip of the spear, and we can help you with the design upfront, concepts, estimate budgets, and we do a lot of educational events for review and permitting agencies, all the way through from design to inspection to maintenance. And we love working with contractors. That's usually who actually orders products from us after your designs have been specified on their plans and they win the bid. We work with contractors on pre-bid so we can get them more comfortable with solutions maybe they don't have hands-on experience with yet. We do pre-con meetings. We help make sure they understand the beginning of the installation process and answer any questions they have. And we stay involved to educate the owners, the contractors, whoever needs to know about maintenance. There are a lot of opportunities there, folks. For any of you that have not used some of these solutions, there are opportunities to grow your knowledge base, but also to really get yourself ahead of the competition for those of you in the consulting and contracting world. So with that, I want to introduce our speaker, and when she gets done, I'll do the wrap up and the closing at the end, and I'll help Sam answer any questions. For her intro, I'll read. I don't usually read notes, but Sam has a pretty interesting bio, and I've known her for a while, but I do like her bio. She's a civil engineer, and she's responsible for overseeing project evaluations, managing the engineering activities of Presto Geosystems, worldwide partners, and coordinating research and development. She has experience specializing in water resources, stormwater management, and rock and soil stabilization. So it makes her a perfect fit for us. She holds a geotechnical engineering degree from the University of Michigan and a geological engineering graduate degree from Michigan Technological University. She's smart, and she's a registered professional engineer. She provides technical and project-specific support to consultants, contractors, and distributors like us for all the Geosystems products and application areas. And Sam, I think your mic should be hot, so can you say hello to everybody?
Yeah, hello everybody. So as you said, I'm Sam Justice. That's a great intro for me. I don't plan on turning my camera on today, so I just wanted to share a quick photo of me so that you have a face to go along with the voice that you're hearing. And I do want to say I'm going to be a good resource for you guys if you have technical questions about our products or our applications of those products. So if you do have any, more in-depth questions once we're done here today, I'm your girl. And so I do want to apologize. This is my first time using...
You may have to click on the screen again. I may have messed you up there.
This is my first time using Zoom for webinar, so I do want to apologize if there are any technical snafus as we move along here. But we are going to get started because we do have a lot of good content that we want to cover today. So we're going to start with understanding the benefits of using a porous pavement system and how both rigid and flexible systems can perform under varying traffic loading conditions. And we're going to talk about using both aggregate surface and vegetated or grassed surfaces for porous pavements and why you might choose one over the other. And finally, we're going to get into how porous pavements are capable of detaining stormwater runoff and helping you achieve green building goals on your site. So the natural first question is, why are porous pavements needed, and how are they going to be different than a standard pavement surface that we would typically see? So porous pavements are a class of solutions that address in a cost-effective way regulations that may need to be met. After 40 plus years, the Clean Water Act continues to create the need for stormwater management for both quantity and quality. And most states have developed non-point pollution regulations with specific targets. Local regulations may require even more stringent standards if a project is located near a protected wetland or water source. And porous pavements are going to be one great way to meet all of these criteria while still performing in a structurally meaningful and long-lasting way. And another reason that you may choose porous pavements is because you want to. Poor soil conditions are becoming more common as better suited sites are more scarce and land is at a premium. High stormwater management value is going to be the desire to make the best use of valuable, high-cost land and reduce the need for stormwater ponds by increasing the porosity of your pavements. Porous pavement systems handle the water at the point of impact, percolating the water where it falls, and avoiding the need for additional conveyance pipes or structures that might otherwise be necessary. And sustainable solutions are popular with the public nowadays because of the high percentage of recycled materials, reduced landfilling of those abundant recycled materials, and the ability to achieve green energy credits. So there are a couple different porous pavement options available on the market today. The more traditional and probably the more well-known option for porous pavements are going to be the porous or pervious version of traditional pavements. So that's porous concrete, pervious asphalts, and concrete paver blocks. These applications allow for normal traffic frequency use, and they do have increased infiltration over their standard counterparts, but they have some durability challenges, and so they're going to suffer because of that. So the biggest difference between the standard and a porous version of these types of surfaces is going to be the cross section. All three of these methods have deeper cross sections and require a choker or a bedding course between your pavement layer and the open graded base layer underneath. So this is going to be an extra installation step that requires additional time and adds costs, as well as needing extra materials to create. However, there are some significant drawbacks in addition to that cross-section depth to using these more traditional porous methods. Cost is going to be the biggest factor, both during installation, because you need specialized materials to create these type of pavements, and you need specialty contractors who know how to properly install them, and higher cost over the lifetime of the system because you're going to need a lot more maintenance. Regular deep cleaning is going to be required to reduce clogged areas, as is resurfacing or replacement of lost material due to raveling. And that occurs because there's weak bonds within these materials, which is what makes them porous, but also what makes them fall apart. And in general, pervious concrete and asphalt surfaces tend to look unfinished, leading to some questionable aesthetics. So here at Presto Geosystems, we offer two different types of porous pavement systems, a flexible and a rigid system. And instead of adaptations of existing pavements, our solutions are designed from the ground up to function as porous pavements. So we're going to start with discussing the rigid porous pavements. One option is going to be to create a vegetated porous pavement with a grass surface. It's meant for occasional or infrequent traffic, and it delivers the aesthetic of a green space. Local vegetation can be used to create a seamless look with your existing plants. And a unique blend of topsoil and clean aggregate is used as the base layer, allowing for root growth while providing necessary stabilizing strength. Our other option for rigid systems is going to be an aggregate surface porous pavement. This system can handle higher traffic frequency, including daily use. And a confined aggregate can perform as an on-site stormwater detention basin, reducing or maybe even eliminating the need for conveyance pipes or other stormwater infrastructure. The structural strength and loading capabilities of these systems are going to depend on what your subgrade material is, which one of the infill types you choose, and whether or not you have a base layer. So these are some of the important characteristics that are inherent to the GeoBlock vegetated system. The GeoBlock is a rigid porous paver unit, meaning that the panels are not meant to bend or twist. And this rigid nature means that a thinner cross-section is going to be possible and is a stronger system compared to systems that are made of geotextiles, which are also on the market. We're going to talk a little bit more about those as we go along. And so this is going to be quite different than other porous pavement units that are available, which are considered flexible systems like the Geo Web and have significantly reduced loading capabilities. The attributes that have the biggest impact on the load distribution are the paver's wall strength and stiffness and a strong tabular connection. An important aspect of the GeoBlock vegetated units is their large amount of open space in the bottom of each cell, which allows for full root penetration, so the grass is thick and uniform. And that mix of aggregate and topsoil we call engineered base, and it provides an optimal growing medium for that vegetation. So the GeoPave aggregate surface units are going to be really similar to the GeoBlock units we just saw, with the same rigid paver characteristics, but with specific features needed for the performance of an aggregate infill. And the main difference I want to highlight is going to be the monolithic mesh bottom. So rather than the large open space that we just saw in GeoBlock, this is a mesh on the bottom of the GeoPave units. So it's molded in place on the underside of the unit, and it helps keep the stone infill from migrating underneath the system. And it also is part of the integrated nature and assists in the overall rigidity of the paver unit. And this bottom spreads the load similar to a snowshoe effect, so that the wheels aren't going to create any ruts as they go over. And the GeoPave units are locked together with a strong connection device, and so they can create a fully integrated, contiguous pavement that's highly resistant to traffic stresses. And this system isn't going to lift up over time, which is common with geotextile-based porous pavements. It's going to stay in place so you don't have to do a lot of maintenance repair. And so that was our rigid products. Now we're going to move on to our flexible product. We call it Geo Web. This is a geocell, which is a term you may have heard before. It's similar to a geogrid, but it has a defined depth, so it's a 3D product. And flexible porous pavements can support the same loads as the rigid pavers that we just saw, but typically they're going to require a slightly deeper cross section to carry those heavier loads. But the flexible nature is beneficial if you know that your areas has potential for settlement, such as across wetland areas. So the Geo Web system is that 3D cellular confinement system, meaning that the Geo Web panels have individual cells that are filled with a material that ultimately makes up the final surface of your road or parking area. And by confining this infill material, the system distributes the loads and prevents ruts. And those cells also keep that material in place so that it's not going to wash away during a stormwater event. And the surface of the porous pavement is going to be stable no matter what the infill is chosen. And it's going to need very little maintenance. So in this case, the flexible porous pavement systems, you're driving on your infill material rather than the plastic paver units that you would with the rigid system. So that's going to be the biggest difference. So the Geo Web system has two main attributes that we need to highlight. And the first is going to be that cell or container size. Comes in 3 diameters, small, medium, and large, and a couple different cell heights ranging from 3 all the way up to 12 inches. And needing those the project dimensions are going to help you determine which one is going to be right for you. And because it's a flexible system, the seam where all of those connecting points are is going to be very important to the function of how the Geo Web system works. The stronger the seam, the better the performance of the Geo Web or any geocell system. And a strong seam allows for heavier infill material and better lifetime performance. And the strength of the panel material also is going to be critical to the performance of a geocell system like the Geo Web. And an important benefit to using this type of system is that you can use low quality aggregate and even salvaged materials on site to use as your infill. And using salvaged aggregate can save a significant amount of money on material and hauling costs if you don't need to truck in expensive engineered stone. And when you eliminate the fines within the material, that provides confinement and aids in compaction of these cohesionless soils. Without fines, you can significantly improve the drainage and let water flow freely through the system, preventing pore pressure buildup and global failure. So that's how it acts as that porous pavement system. And it's easy to see how a rigid porous pavement system would work to support your loads. Little more difficult to see how a flexible system would work. So the question is, does it actually work? And the answer is yes. You can see the comparison within a truck yard here, with the Geo system on the left and without it on the right. This is with a single pass of one of those fully loaded semi-trucks. Fully loaded, it's going to have this huge difference. Imagine on the right how often you're going to need to replace that system to keep it running in shape. So with that, we've now talked about the characteristics that make both rigid and flexible porous pavement units special. And with that in mind, we're now going to talk about the benefits of choosing a porous pavement over a hard surface that is impervious. So all of our products offer significant storage of stormwater in the cross-section as it moves into the groundwater system. And because the water infiltrates right through the system, you're going to have minimal sheet runoff at the surface, reducing flooding potential on and around your pavement. Both the Geo Web and Geo Pave systems have a high percentage of open area and utilize a highly permeable, open graded aggregate infill, so the stormwater infiltrates exceptionally fast. And then the loose and protected topsoil infill in the Geo Block units allows water to infiltrate faster than a typical vegetated area on site. Other paver systems on the market are geotextile fabric based, and so they're going to percolate much more slowly, which is going to defeat the purpose of a porous pavement. Pavements that allow water to flow through the surface and into your open graded base course can reduce the amount of requirements for stormwater storage at the surface. And the rate of infiltration of all of our porous pavement materials is going to depend on also what your subgrade material is. A clay is going to infiltrate much slower than a sand. So that's going to determine if you do need additional stormwater storage at the surface, or if you can have all of that storage happen within your porous pavement system. So if your native subgrade has that pore infiltration, if it's a really wet clay, or maybe you are required to direct your water to a central location, collection pipes can be installed in your open graded base course. And the pipes should have perforations to collect that water and then be sloped to maintain velocity. And all of that can happen without affecting your surface grade. Providing that wrapped perforated pipe is typically not recommended unless your base is clean. Otherwise, it can become clogged. It's usually better to provide a geotextile filter around the perimeter of a drainage trench or a French drain so that the pipe is encapsulated within stone. The main thought is you do want to prevent that clogging, and the method that you use will be based on what you have on site, what type of stone is available. But you can have a nice flat parking lot and still collect your stormwater with ease. So our Geo Block and Geo Pave rigid pavers do have a really high crush strength because of their rigid and shared wall connections. Pavers with enough strength allow for less base requirements to support the load, reducing your potential cross-section by up to 67%. And the surface of your porous pavement resists concentrated rutting as the load is dispersed across the rigid paver units. So there's no wheel ruts and no sunken drive lanes. And so you're not going to get any of those normal failure points that you would see with a standard pavement. And the units are strong enough to drive on when they're unfilled, which makes installation both faster and easier. So if a thin cross section is what you need on your site, one of these products is going to be the way you want to go. So both of the rigid and flexible porous pavement options can cover a large area as a single contiguous system. And the integrated system supports each unit with strong connectors, common cell walls, and everything else to create that contiguous pavement with a high distribution of vehicle loads. And it allows for higher vehicle weights to drive on the system with that thinner cross section. And it allows the system to be installed over poor subgrades, even very poor subgrades like wetlands. The geotextile fabric-based systems don't share any of those cell walls or connector points. So they're going to warp under vehicle loads, and they just don't have that same load spreading capability. So speaking of load spreading, one of the functions of a porous pavement system is to reduce the stress that's transferred to the soil by vehicle traffic. And a great application of these products is to use them as tree root protection. By laying these systems over tree roots, so as close to the tree trunks as possible, you reduce the stress that puts that pressure on those roots and could potentially damage them, which would result in killing that tree. So if you have trees that need to stay in place, all of our systems are a great way to get your vehicle access roads, like a driveway, which uses any of those systems to create a stone or vegetated surface with keeping those existing vegetation in place. So with the rigid system, that shared wall system and strong connectors creates a framework that's highly resistant to movement or breakage from vehicle turning stresses, so your torsional loads. So both the GeoPave and GeoBlock systems are not just straight drive lanes, they're full service vehicle areas, allowing for starting, stopping, turning, and everything in between. The panels aren't going to become damaged from any normal vehicle activities, even the heaviest trucks or semis. And both the rigid and flexible paver units align well with existing asphalt or traditional pavements. So here you can see a car dealership parking lot edition. The paver units come in rectangles, but they can all be field cut to handle curves, existing structures such as manholes, or other obstacles that are common on site. The GeoPave and GeoBlock units, or the Geo Web panels, can work in concert with a hard surface pavement, and they're so porous they can actually handle the sheet runoff from adjacent impervious parking areas. So this is a great way to add additional parking spaces while still meeting stormwater requirements on site, with no need to create additional stormwater infrastructure such as drainage swales or ponds. So the cell walls of the GeoPave unit are meant to be visible, and so they were designed with the herringbone pattern, similar to a paver stone aesthetic. And additionally, the stone color can actually be varied to create a sense of separation, useful for walkways, parking lots, and road shoulders. The GeoBlock units allow for full vegetation growth with a natural look, so you're not going to see the cell walls, just a nice green lawn. The Geo Web panels are actually going to be completely covered by any stone that you use. So an aggregate surface is all that you're going to see. So whatever look you're going for on site, you can achieve it with one of these products without that unfinished look that's really common with that porous concrete or asphalt. And reducing a site's overall environmental impact can help you meet green infrastructure, low impact development, or green building goals for building in protected or densely populated areas. It can also help you meet stormwater requirements that limit the amount of hard surface in your landscape plans, which is becoming an increasingly common requirement in cities and townships. And so this is something we've experienced all across the US and are absolutely willing to help you achieve for your specific projects. So there are a number of constructability benefits as well. All of the products are lightweight enough for a single person to carry at least one or two at a time, and the connectors are fast to install. And one of the great things about using the rigid system is that the infill placement is fast, as both tracked and rubber tired equipment can drive on the panels when they're unfilled. So you can see that here in the photos. Paving crews and specialized paving equipment aren't necessary, and oftentimes landscaper crews are all that's going to be required for installation. So you can save on equipment and labor costs and get these systems in the ground quickly without waiting for cure times or sequenced construction limits. And the rigid GeoPave and GeoBlock units work best on a mild grade. Because they're flat paver units, the slope does need to be quite gradual without any sharp breaks between those grade changes. But the GeoWeb flexible system is going to be a great option if you know that you have a slope. The GeoWeb panels can be placed on slopes as steep as 30 degrees and still allow for vehicle traffic. The GeoWeb systems can also handle dips or hills more easily than the rigid system. So if you want to minimize your excavation and grading activities, that's okay. The flexible Geo system is going to work great. So the locked in place system requires virtually no maintenance. Place it and forget it. Owners and maintenance crews are definitely going to appreciate this feature. We have bright yellow delineators that are available for parking lines or other markings, so you can make the space work for your needs. And other common extras, such as parking stops, are also easy to install in any of our porous pavement units. So Presto Geosystems has a free, easy-to-use tool that can help you determine the right porous pavement system for your specific project and site conditions. A cross-section of the system is created based on your inputs and system requirements. And it's a way to determine exactly how deep the cross-section needs to be to retain a certain amount of stormwater storage. The tool is available on our website, prestogeo.com, and our engineering team, including myself, is always happy to help give advice or expertise on designing one of these systems. So this is a quick look at what the Design Assistant tool provides you. It's a pretty basic cross-section, but it can be pretty helpful during the beginning of the design process. And if needed, additional calculations and CAD details that the engineering team here we can provide those. But this tool is going to be a good first step when talking to regulators to show that there is stormwater storage available in this type of system. So now, didn't click. There we go. So now we're going to take another quick look at the flexible Geo Web System. We've talked about it a bit so far, comparing it to our rigid pavers, but it's also going to be a good option for pervious pavements in challenging site conditions, such as wetlands or along hills. So this is going to be our typical cross-section. You start with the subbase of whatever strength you need, typically expressed as the California bearing ratio. And then we decide whether or not you need a geotextile, typically woven or non-woven, and it's going to depend on your system application, which one is going to be appropriate. A subbase layer of aggregate may be needed if the subgrade soil is very poor, or if you have incredibly high loads that are going to be applied. Then the GeoWeb material is going to be laid down, and then you fill it in with your desired infill material, stone or salvaged material on site. And you do want to have a slight overfill so that you completely cover the GeoWeb panels so the plastic is not visible. And it's important to realize that you need all of these components working together to support the load with a flexible system. So we're going to do a quick case study with a few photos walking through a marshland area. Oh, sorry, I'm not clicking through. So quick case study.
Sam, one of the challenges is on some of those slides, you'll click it, but it takes a 6 or 7 or 8 second delay sometimes. Sorry for that. You're doing great,
yeah,
by
no,
the way.
Thank you. I'm trying to run through so that we have enough time for questions at the end. But
you're doing awesome. Thanks.
I'll make sure that everybody's looking at the slide I think that they're looking at.
Sometimes you got to go back. I get it.
So this community came together to install a walking trail through a really marshy area, doing everything themselves, so no contractors. And so that shows how easy it is to install the system, especially when you don't actually have a lot of expertise in this type of installation. And because this was a marsh area, not interrupting the water flow of the surrounding environment was critical. So the GeoWeb panels are going to be filled in with stone. So that allows that water to flow through and then down into your marsh without creating any runoff or non-infiltration areas like an asphalt road would have. And this way, the impact of the trail on the natural environment is actually minimized, and people can still get a clean, stable area for their recreational uses. And then it's going to be easy to use either machinery or manual labor to fill in the GeoWeb cells. It's also going to be the same with both the GeoBlock and GeoPave systems, as we're going to see that in just a minute. So the overall depth of your cross-section is going to be pretty variable with the GeoWeb system, since the panel comes in quite a few different depths, and it may need that base layer of aggregate if you expect to have a heavier load. And the GeoWeb system usually requires the most excavation of any of our products, So, ooh, excuse me. So that's something to keep in mind when thinking about which product is going to be right for your project site. So another option is to do a livestock watering pad, as you can see here. The cows and other animals can actually really dig up a soil space, and even if you cover it, oh, too far. If you cover it up with aggregate, they'll dig up that aggregate as well. So you can see you can install the Geo Web system over the area, kind of right in front of where they collect their water and any feed. And that way it's maintained better. You don't have to come back in constantly, put more stone in, anything like that, while still being safe for their hooves so they're not actually damaging any of their feet.
And Sam, can I jump in on that as well?
Absolutely.
I love what you said about the Davenport walking trail, all done by volunteers, no contractors. So is this one. This was a friend of mine in Southern Iowa who's a member of the NRC, or sorry, an employee of NRCS. And he actually used this for the Iowa Cattlemen's Association. We had a really, really wet spring in 2019. And he actually had cows getting stuck in the mud. So that mud was soft, more than 2 feet deep. And there were cows getting stuck in the mud to their bellies, to the point of being dangerous for the cows, but also for the mama cows. They were getting really muddy, and it was unhealthy for the babies and spreading disease. So this was really important to get done, and this was all done by volunteers. This is just a landowner who called my bluff when I said I have construction experience and I like to do pre-cons, make sure things get installed right. At a presentation in front of other mutual people and friends, he asked me to help him do this, so I did. And we had an audience of 120 people out there when it was first built and installed. And he has since sent me a year later pictures, and it still looks fantastic. All the rock is in place, no settling, no rutting. Just as you said, it's great for load support. And we're going to have some questions towards the end as far as fabric selection underneath a GeoWeb or any of these systems. And I'll tee that up for you when you get done with your presentation. Thank you.
Absolutely. So that's the Geo Web system. It's the flexible, porous pavement. So it's got some challenges in the design that you need to do, but it is going to have some really good application types. So it is going to be a great option. Moving on to the sort of other option that we had, that rigid porous pavement. So we're going to start with the Geo Pave, which is the aggregate surface. So here's a typical cross-section of the Geo Pave system. It's 2 inches deep, so the overall depth of the system depends on if you need that open graded aggregate base course. There are a variety of factors that decide if you need that base course and how deep it is. But if you do need it, your cross-section is going to be that slight amount bit deeper. And depending on your native subgrade soil, a geotextile separation layer may be required. And note that there's going to be no need for that choker or bedding course underneath any of these units, which you saw on like the porous concrete and porous asphalt systems. So there's going to be no layer that limits the amount of stormwater infiltration into the system. So you're not going to have any of that ponding at the surface because it can't infiltrate fast enough. So the biggest factor in determining the base depth is going to be the strength of the soil, which, as we said, is expressed as the California bearing ratio. The higher the ratio, the stronger the soil. And the strength of the GeoPave system is that even up to the highest load rating, AASHTO H20, H25, which are heavy, fully loaded fire trucks, there's a low base depth requirement. Only 6 inches, as compared to up to 14 or 18 inches, even if you use a geotextile fabric-based system. And it's important to note that this table only shows the minimum depth requirements. The base can be increased if you want additional stormwater storage or if it's required that you have a certain amount of storage available. So there are a wide variety of uses for the GeoPave system, including fire and utility lanes, site access roads, road shoulders for runoff reduction, and trails or walkways. And it's important to note that they are ADA compliant once they're filled in with stone. So everybody can use these types of systems. So Unlike the GeoPave unit, which again are the rigid paver structures, the geotextile-based paver systems, or what we typically call rolled systems, because they come rolled up like a fabric would, they can have some problems because they don't have those common shared cell walls that we've talked about. And they allow the stone infill to get underneath the system, causing uplift and damage like you see here. So the design of the GeoPave system with its rigid shared walls and that integrated mesh bottom helps prevent these types of issues. So we do just want to make you aware that because the system says it allows stormwater infiltration, doesn't mean it's actually going to be appropriate for your site or your project. You do want something that's designed to work well. So I have a quick case study showing how the GeoPave system is going to work from start to finish. So this study was at the parking lot at the Citadel in South Carolina. And you can see how close it is to a coastal area, which is going to be similar for situations along inland lakes, stream beds, ponds, anywhere that you have water flow. And so this system was actually installed in the summer of 2009, and it's still in place today. So a good long lifetime, and it's still going strong, not seeing any instances where it may need to be removed. And so because this project was primarily about stormwater retention rather than just supporting vehicle loads, the open graded base course was quite deep, 8 inches. So standard lightweight construction equipment was used with no need for specialty equipment. And the crew, which had no prior experience to installing the GeoPave system, was able to achieve an installation rate of 1,200 square feet a day, including the excavation and filling in the panels, both with the equipment and by hand. So pretty good clip. And the connectors are easy to install, and it's pretty apparent where they need to be placed. Some of the walls are half height, and those half height walls line up between different units. So the contractors know exactly where these connectors need to be placed. And the clips can be installed by a single worker without needing any electrical equipment. So another cost savings. And as I said, a small excavator or front end loader is going to be a great option for placing that stone infill. Here's the parking lot right after construction is finished. And because the stormwater retention in the base was so deep, no additional surface detention ponds were required, which is great for areas without space to spare. And if an above ground detention pond had been installed in this area, there wouldn't have been room for the additional parking spaces. So this was a great compromise between function and environmental concerns. And here is the picture of the parking lot about 2 years after installation, still looking as good as the day it was placed. So no maintenance was required over those 28 months in terms of replacing any of the units. We do have some recommended tips for keeping the GeoPave pavement in good shape, including keeping the lot clear of organics, such as fallen leaves, by raking or leaf blowing. And when there's snow, you do want to make sure that the snowplow blades are kept a little bit above the units so they're not in direct contact, which could potentially cause damage. I know that placing porous pavements in cold weather or snowy conditions is a concern for many regulators. So we have quite a bit of information available on our website answering a lot of the common questions we see, or contact us directly and we'd be more than happy to help alleviate any of those concerns that you may have. So now we're going to go with the vegetated system, which is again a rigid paver unit. We call it GeoBlock. So again, there's the typical cross-section of the GeoBlock system. The panels themselves do come in 2 different depths, 1.2 or 2 inches. And the depth of the overall system could depend on whether or not you need that base layer. Topsoil or sod is going to be placed in the cells, and then the roots reach down into the base so that they have room to grow so they're not going to be starving at the surface. And a base course is going to be that mix of topsoil and open graded aggregate, which allows the topsoil to promote root growth while the aggregate helps support your vehicle loads. We call it engineered base. And it's usually just a 2/3, 1/3 mix aggregate to topsoil. So pretty simple to create on your own. And the uses for GeoBlock grass paver are going to be similar to what we've seen before. But you do want to keep in mind that grass pavements are meant for occasional use only. So fire and utility lanes, access roads, special event parking, or overflow parking for things like parks, churches, and stadiums are all good options. Basically, anywhere that you don't anticipate vehicle traffic loads every single day. So as I said, there are two different depths, and it allows for some flexibility of choice. If your expected loads are light, think cars or pickup trucks, you don't need to support as much as the roads that are going to be carrying fully loaded fire trucks. So the two products are very similar. They act the same way. They just have different depths. So we can help you decide which one is going to be more appropriate for your project. And again, a table showing how deep your engineered base is going to need to be, helping you determine what your overall cross section is. So the thicker GeoBlock 5150 product, 2 inches deep, can have a thinner load than a thinner cross section than the smaller GeoBlock 1.2 inch panel. So if having shallow base depths is important, you may want to go with the deeper rigid paver unit. So, and again, these are only minimums. If you do want to have more stormwater storage, you can add more base. So there are also the geotextile based porous pavements for vegetated surfaces as well, and they act even worse than the aggregate ones do. So the fabric systems tend to rut in areas of soft soil because they can warp due to vehicle loads. They're not actually supporting the load. They're just digging deeper in the soil with every pass. And these systems require the infill material to be sand, not topsoil. And it's not hard to imagine the difference in grass when it grows in sand, that sort of icky yellow straw-like color, versus the nutrient-rich topsoil, going to give you that nice green lawn. So we do have some quick case studies for the GeoBlock system as well. So our first one is going to be at Green Tree Elementary School, which was done in St. Louis, Missouri. And they needed to create access lanes for emergency vehicles to the back of the buildings on their site while still maintaining a nice green lawn for the kids to play on. So the system was installed in the summer of 2003 and it's been in place for well over a decade and a half now. The ground was leveled off and the GeoBlock 5150, so the 2-inch deep panels, were placed. And they were laid in a herringbone pattern, which is recommended for those areas that are going to have bi-directional traffic or lots of turning and movement, as is common in parking areas. The base was only 2 inches deep, which satisfied the requirements based on their expected vehicle loads. And then the cells were filled with a local topsoil and seeded. And local is good because that way you know the grass is going to grow. And as we previously mentioned, it's easy to field cut the panels to accommodate curves or other obstacles so that the grass and the vehicle support go right up to the edge of your area if necessary. So there's not going to be any spaces that are lacking support. And once the grass grows in, it completely camouflages the panels. So it looks just like a normal lawn area. And months after completion, the vegetation is fully in place and can be used for emergency or overflow parking situations. The lawn is still available for play, which the kids can enjoy, since it's a lot easier to avoid skin knees on grass. And the maintenance of grass pavements is going to be similar to any grass surface. Your standard lawnmower is going to do the trick. So our last case study today, it's on the campus of Newman University in Wichita, Kansas. So the campus needed to upgrade their emergency fire access lanes. And while the fire trucks were able to drive on the existing concrete sidewalks, local regulations required that the surrounding lawn area also be able to support those vehicles if necessary. So the GeoBlock units were installed along the sidewalks, effectively creating a mixed surface driveway with concrete sidewalks and then vegetated areas with the porous pavement. The units were then filled in with topsoil and seeded. And the units, again, go right up to the edge of those concrete sidewalks. So they're constrained against movement. And there's going to be no areas that are unprotected. So there isn't going to be any areas where a vehicle tire may sink into the mud, and there's not going to be any scour of that soil. Again, the plastic is fully covered, so the average person isn't going to notice anything unusual about this area. The sidewalk area itself hasn't changed, but now the area is going to be accessible for emergency vehicles. Bill, did you want to add anything about the rigid porous pavements before I wrap up here?
I do. I really like the idea of reducing the impervious area, so it reduces the amount of stormwater detention that's required. But I also like the look of having this drive lane that doesn't have to be overpaved. We live in a lot of communities where, because of traffic flow and safety concerns for emergency vehicles, a lot of the public streets have gotten really, really wide in the last several years. So I think any opportunity for private development to do low impact development like this is really a great benefit to the entire community, because a lot of cities that are doing green infrastructure still have to satisfy their traffic requirement first. So anything you can do as an alternative to paving an entire wide road through a campus or private property is excellent, not just for fire access lanes, but anywhere it can be used in commercial, residential, or office is great. And I don't have any other specific things to add about this project, but we have some great questions that will be available to answer here in a few minutes. Thanks, Sam.
Okay, I've got really just one more thing to say then, and that's that our engineering team here at Presto, including myself, work closely with landscape designers and engineers, and we offer a free project design evaluation service for every porous pavement project that you may have. So we're going to analyze your site-specific data and offer a recommendation that meets your project needs. So we talked about 3 different products today. That's a lot to cover. It's a lot to keep in mind as to which one may be the most appropriate for what you need. So we're going to be able to help you determine which one is going to be the most appropriate and get everything in place so that you know you have a complete system solution, that you're going to have a good system, not going to fail over time. So you have that extra peace of mind. So just to summarize, we covered the GeoPave, GeoBlock, and Geo Web Systems, so rigid and flexible porous pavement systems, and detailed some of the many advantages they have over traditional hard surface pavements. Benefits such as stormwater management, high vehicle load capabilities, and aesthetic aggregate or vegetated infill were just some of the great aspects of using one of these porous pavement systems. So I will turn it back over to Bill. My contact information is here if you want to contact me directly. Otherwise, all of the guys at ASP are a great resource for any of our products, and they'd be able to help you, or they could come to me, get the answers, then come back to you. So I see that we have a lot of questions that have come in, and we want to answer as many as possible. So I'll turn it back over to Bill.
That's awesome, Sam. I love working with you. You are such a pro. You got us right on schedule, better than I did on my low impact development and green infrastructure presentation last week. I get excited and easily distracted with side stories. Please forgive me for the audio. You will hear a forklift loading a truck right beside me. I'm excited that we're still working in this essential industry. And I'm excited also to say that our company is practicing all of the social distancing and the safety requirements that's expected of all of us right now. I forgot to say Happy Earth Day at the beginning, and I'll get into some of the, so Happy Earth Day. I'll get into some of the closing details here. But first, Sam, are you able to see those questions? If not, I will read some of those to you.
I can see them here, so I could go through some of the quick ones, or you can decide which ones are going to be more appropriate.
I'm going to tee up some of our favorites. A pro tip for everyone that on this call that might have to host their own webinar someday is to do what Sam and I did earlier this week, and that is to tee up your own questions that you want to ask at the end if no one participates. But you all have asked like 10 questions or more, and I don't want to click on it and take away Sam's controls. But Sam, I'm thrilled to say the 3 questions that we wanted to make sure we asked each other have already been asked. So Chuck Dreesen asked if you could place these products on grade, and what is the maximum drivable grade?
So that's a great question. The GeoBlock and GeoPave systems, those rigid pavers, really need to be on quite a mild grade. Think 8% or lower. And that's because they are that rigid system. They're not really going to be able to handle steep grade changes or anything like that. If you know that you're going to have a steeper grade than 8%, you're going to want to go with the flexible Geo Web system. And that can actually handle up to essentially 2 to 1 slopes, so about 26 degrees, 26 to 30 degrees, so 50% or more, which is a really great amount of ability to be able to have that such a steep slope. You will need to anchor the system when you're on that steep of a slope, and that's something that we can help you determine what exactly that anchorage is and how it needs to be placed. But yes, you can get all the way up to about a 50% slope with the Geo Web system.
That is awesome. And you already answered one of the other questions. It's not the three I was going to tee up. Someone else asked, did you mean to say 30 degree or 30%? And you had said 30 degree, which is a 58% slope. So that's really great. You've already answered that one there without even trying to. Another one was asked by Glenn Adair, what happens with snow and ice? And then someone else asked specifically about snow and ice removal. How do you not damage and tear out the product?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we do have a lot of information on our website, but in general, you have two options. The first is to use like a salt or a chemical de-icer. That is not going to damage any of our products because they are made of an HDPE plastic. It's going to be chemically inert, so it's not going to react to de-icing chemicals. But because it is a porous pavement, there would be the potential that that salt or chemical would wash into your groundwater system. So you might want to avoid that. So if you're not using one of those types of de-icers and you want to use a plow, you can either use a rubber blade boot. So it's just a rubber cover that goes on the bottom of your blade. It helps make it be a little more smooth as it glides over the system. If you don't have that boot, you want to lift the plow blade up a 1/2 to 1 inch so that it's not in direct contact with any of the products. If it were in direct contact, there could be the potential for damaging one of those systems with the blade. So by lifting it up, you know you're not going to have that impact damage. And then because they are porous systems, they actually help promote that 1/2 inch of snow that would be left to actually melt down into the system. Even when it's cold enough that snow wouldn't melt, it's still going to help move that snow down into your porous system so it's not left at the surface.
And I
So
can
that's the kind of
confirm
quick and
that.
dirty, but we do have more information on our website.
And I can confirm that I've seen it where the porous systems really do have the latent heat from the ground, and it really does help speed the melting of that. And it's excellent instead of leaving the moisture there to refreeze. Excellent answer. On the third question would be how much stormwater can be stored, and that was asked by Chris Krennick. And Sam, you wanted to talk about that anyway. How much stormwater capacity under the permeable or go ahead, porous systems?
Yeah, so in general, we say the depth of the cross section of a porous pavement, 1/3 of that depth can store stormwater. So if you have a 3-inch deep cross section, you can store 1 inch worth of stormwater. And then obviously it scales up from there. So that may be why you want to add a additional aggregate base layer underneath one of these products, even if you don't need it to support the vehicle loads. If you have that additional depth, that can store your extra stormwater. So you can get 6 inches of cross-section depth for 2 inches of stormwater base, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of the rule of thumb. 1/3 of your overall depth can be used as stormwater storage.
That's awesome. Good answer. And that leads to what I would say would probably be our final question. How do we choose woven or non-woven fabric to go under the product? That's asked by Colleen Bowers, our friend in Iowa City at Shive Hattery.
Yeah, so that's going to be a great question, is why do you need one or the other? And sometimes you may not even need one entirely. With the Geo block system, so the vegetated grass surface, you may not want a geotextile at all. You may want to allow that root growth to keep going down past what you consider your porous pavement cross-section down into the subgrade. But in general, you will want one, and either a woven or a non-woven are going to be the most common. The woven geotextiles add a little more strength to your overall system. So you know if you have a very soft subgrade, something that's really mucky, cars sink into it very easily, you may want that woven geotextile to add extra strength to your system without having to go deeper in a cross section. So usually by using a woven geotextile, you can cut 2 or 3 inches off of your potential cross section depth. So that can be great in terms of if you have to worry about excavation. The non-woven really just acts as a separator layer. It doesn't provide any strength to the system. So we can help you determine which one is going to be the most appropriate for your site. But if you want sort of a general rule of thumb to start with, a lightweight woven geotextile is always going to be a good choice.
Thank you, Sam. That was awesome. You've done such a great job. I know everybody else is muted, but I can hear everybody applauding. Everybody give a golf clap to Sam. Don't wake your kids or your dogs at home. But Sam, that was excellent. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did.
I did. I'm glad I was able to join you all today.
So good. And we had 19 Q&As. I'll try to answer those all after we get off of here. And within the next day or two, Don Tiemann, who I'm logged in as Don Tiemann. So every time you see the microphone going, it says Don. I'm Bill Murphy. Don or I are going to work together on wrapping this up with the Survey Monkey that'll go out to you, and maybe give me another day to answer the Q&As. I'll try to do that in writing and share with everyone because they're good frequently asked questions. But we really want your feedback on that Survey Monkey to help us improve our webinars and let us know of other future interests for content. But we really also want you to take advantage of scheduling with me, and I'll bring Sam in if we need to, for sure, to schedule a Zoom meeting with your company so we can have the mics open and you all can chime in and we can just have a conversation. So please take care of that and we'll get you your PDH certificates. And our next presentation is next Wednesday with Profile Products with Matt Welch. The following Wednesday, May 6th, will be Fleximat. Beyond that, it'll be Geotextiles, Flex MSE, some soft armor erosion control. All of our companies and all of our branches are very familiar with Presto Geosystems. So I do encourage you to reach out to your local reps. And I want to close by saying, be safe, be happy, be hope-filled, happy Earth Day, and reach out if you need help with anything. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you.